right, so it's nice to see everybody this morning. We have a big crowd at Gyobutsuji this morning. Lacey and Jordan are here in the other room, so it's kind of odd that we have to be in separate rooms because of the Zoom factor. Because usually, of course, you would be all in one room and hearing the talk, but the space is such that we have to be in separate rooms. But they are actually here at Gyobutsuji, and we welcome them, and it's nice to have you here, and it's nice to see everybody else too. So I will go ahead and get started with today's talk. And we're talking, of course, about Shobogenzo Makahannyaharamitsu. And we have, excuse me, let's see, my glasses disappeared. Let me see if I can find them. Here they are. All right. We're on just this second or third line, I think. So, but last time, we talked about the line that said, the five aggregates are forms, sensations, perceptions, and consciousness. This is the fivefold prajna. So it's a pretty amazing statement by Dogen Zenji. We talked about this for quite a while, that these five skandhas, this body and mind that we have, or that has us, or that we practice with, is itself, Prajna Paramita when we practice with it. Depends on our relationship with our delusions, with our body and mind, and those are the only things that we have to practice with. We can't get rid of them. We need to accept them, honor them, study them, and practice with them in order to express this Prajna Paramita. Because even our delusions, are expressions of Indra's net, or this vast reality of interconnection and change. And so we can't negate anything. We can't reject even our delusions when we talk about Prajna Paramita. So I want to go on to the next line, and this one is another amazing one too. The whole text is just packed full of stuff, of course, but this line simply says, clear seeing is itself Prajna Paramita. So of course, in the Heart Sutra, it says Avalokiteshvara Bodhi Sattva, when deeply practicing Prajna Paramita, clearly saw that all five aggregates are empty. And this is what this is referring to, of course. This clear seeing is a very interesting word to me. Also, of course, we haven't really talked about Prajna Paramita. We talked about it more extensively when I gave the lectures on the Heart Sutra, but just to go over that again, something that can't be spoken about and is more profound than anything we can think of, just to go over it briefly. Prajna Paramita, is, of course, this reality of interconnectedness and emptiness, and Indra's net is one way we can express it, or Nagarjuna expressed it as emptiness. Everything has no unchanging self, including this self, including all beings, including everything that we encounter. So the word prajna, of course, is usually translated as wisdom. The word kind of suggests like a wisdom beyond our normal way of thinking and gaining knowledge. It's kind of a deeper kind of knowledge or understanding than just what we can apprehend in the normal way that we usually do. So paramita is really the interesting word here too, with this combination. Of course, it's usually translated as something like as highest, or the ultimate, so kind of the highest wisdom or the ultimate wisdom. But what's, or perfection, perfection of wisdom is another way that it's translated. But this word paramita also can be translated another way, that it means actually to go to the other shore, or to be gone to the other shore, or have gone to the other shore of nirvana. So this word is really, it's a word for our zazen in Dogen Zenji's teaching here, and I think in the Heart Sutra too. So, Prajna Paramita isn't something that we try to gain. It's not some kind of wisdom that we do zazen in order to get this kind of highest wisdom and liberate ourselves or liberate others. But this practice of zazen itself is liberation, the liberation of self and other. So, the Heart Sutra says, when Avalokiteshvara was practicing Prajna Paramita, it doesn't say when Avalokiteshvara was reading about it, or trying to understand it, or speaking of it, or studying it, but practicing it. So, in this sentence, clear seeing is itself Prajna Paramita, is also, another way that Dogen Zenji is talking about our zazen practice, I think. So, clear seeing, this, usually we think of this as awakening, or some kind of a satori, or some kind of awakening experience maybe that Avalokiteshvara had. But actually, as we talked about earlier in this text, there's no difference between the time, Dogen Zenji makes this very clear, that Avalokiteshvara, the time of Avalokiteshvara is an event, is one way we can put it. We're all an event. We're not something fixed and unchanging. We're the arising of innumerable different conditions. So this time of Avalokiteshvara, this event of Avalokiteshvara, or Avalokiteshvara, is born when we practice. And we said this last time, or the time before too. A bodhisattva is born in our practice. We express that. We become, or we express the bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara when we practice together with all beings. It's not just this one person who becomes Avalokiteshvara, but all beings express Avalokiteshvara, or Buddha, or whatever we want to say. So this clear seeing, is another way of expressing this, I think, because usually we say, well, there's an object there and we see it, and so we understand it. But how can the five skandhas of Avalokiteshvara see the five skandhas? My teacher used to always emphasize this. It's a strange thing. How can we see the five skandhas? That means that, we're here and our five skandhas are there, and somehow we observe it. But that's impossible, because we use our five skandhas to practice. We cannot see our own eyes. Even if you have a mirror, that's a reflection, of course, in the mirror. But we can't see this body and mind. We can't see our own head. So it means, one thing it points to is that this is going beyond the subject-object relationship, one seamless reality. This clear seeing is going beyond saying this is me and that is that, and I need to, somehow manipulate that relationship in order to awaken. And yet, another key point is it includes the subject-object relationship, though. It goes beyond, it includes it. Our practice includes the Five Skandhas, but we go beyond. So we'll maybe studying this word a little bit will will help a little to understand this a little bit more. But this clear seeing, I spent I didn't have so long to work on the talk this week, but I made some time, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole of looking at words and connections, and it was one of those times when I got to the end of the time I'd allotted for it, and felt like I was really in the same place that I was when I started. But so this is a little bit of a exercise in just studying these words and understanding what they mean for our practice, and I hope it's interesting to you. But this word, clear seeing in Japanese is Shoken. And this show, it's a Chinese word too, of course. It's a very interesting word, and it appears many places in Zen texts. So I kind of looked at different places that it appears and how it relates to our Zazen practice and to this Prajna Paramita and the reality, of all beings. So, Shoken, that is clear seeing in the Heart Sutra and in Makahannyaharamitsu. So it means, usually it's translated as something like to illuminate or to brighten or to understand completely, or to clarify. So, and this ken word can be just like the basic function of seeing, something, the subject-object relationship, but also it has this kind of connotation of awakening, seeing the depth or the real meaning or the most boundless wisdom in something. So this word, let me just look at this real quick. Okay, the word show, I wanted to make a connection to another very important word that has to do with our Zazen. It appears in this word, silent illumination. Silent illumination Zen. So I won't go into all the history of this, but basically the first person that we know of that used this was Wanshi Shogaku, who was a Zen master who lived a couple of hundred years, or about 100 or so, some odd years before Dogen Zenji. And Dogen really respected this Zen master very deeply, and he actually, I think he appears in more of Dogen's writings than anyone else. His name is like Hongji or something in Chinese. I don't have any idea really how to pronounce it, but he's a very important Zen master for Dogen Zenji, and he accumulated the Book of Serenity too, and made this commentary of koans, this kind of classic Zen text that we use to study koans. But this word, was actually a sort of critical word used that Wanshi took and made it his own expression of his understanding of Zazen. And so, this silent illumination, some people say this is what Dogen Zenji's talking about when he's telling us to do shikantaza. And whether shikantaza and this silent illumination Zen, are exactly the same is kind of a question. So I won't get into that, but they're very, deeply connected. There's no doubt. So this Mokusho Zen. The sho is the same sho as in Shoken, or clearly, clearly seeing. So the character Moku means, oops, I just messed up my notes. Okay, here we go. Means can mean silent or quiet, but it also means dark. Can also mean dark or profound, deep, silent. So sitting silently and illuminating the self, illuminating all beings, illuminating Prajna Paramita. But I think this is an amazing word, because in Zen, in the usual way of talking about Zen and kind of traditional symbolism, darkness is not a bad symbol. I mean, darkness usually represents the ultimate reality, the reality of unity beyond discrimination. So when you're in total darkness and walking through the woods or something, you can't see your way. There's no way to discriminate. So there's no discrimination between preferences or beings or anything. There's complete unity. And light usually represents, the relative aspect of reality. So we sit in the Zendo, we discriminate in order to sit Zazen. We say, well, this is the time that we're going to do Zazen. This is my cushion. I'm going to go sit on my cushion. So we have to discriminate in those cases to express this reality beyond discrimination. But it's not quite actually the right way to say it, that we're expressing one side or the other. And I think that's kind of the point of this word, when because it has this word for light and darkness in it, because this moku can mean dark, and this sho means light. So luminous darkness, something like that. And like in the famous, very important Zen text Sandokai, that is the English translation, is the merging of difference, unity. And it talks about in the light, in the darkness, they flow together. Branching streams flow together or as one. And so I think probably one of the reasons why she kept this saying is for this reason, that we're sitting and the light and darkness in Zazen are completely interpenetrated and expressed beyond the dichotomy that the mind makes up, that these two things are different. So it's kind of a problem in our life when we talk about these, ultimate truths and the relative truth. And it's a really important point that Dogen Zenji is making in this text, that we cannot separate out the light from the darkness. Really, we can't. I mean, we do, but that actually is not the reality. I mean, actually, we do separate the light and darkness. That's the problem. That's kind of one of our difficulties. But in Zazen, we just sit, and this luminous darkness, or this dark luminosity, or whatever we want to call it, is simply itself is manifested. So that, I think, is one aspect of this word sho that is very important in this word Mokusho Zen, Silent Illumination, which is a very important word in Zen, and we'll probably study this someday if you guys are interested. But I don't want to take an enormous amount of time, so I want to keep going on. The other thing that brought to mind to me, this word show is this show also shows up in Fukan Zazengi, or it actually goes before Fukan Zazengi, and there's a term in there that's really interesting that we probably are all familiar. It says something like, withdraw, turn the light inward to illuminate the self. And in Japanese, this is Eko Hensho. And the Hensho, the show is the same show as in Silent Illumination or clear seeing. And my teacher talked about this Eko Hensho extensively during a Genzo a few years ago that Lacey and I attended, and it was really amazing, the discussion he had. And he's been studying Shobogenzo for a long time, over 50 years, I think, and he just said he had just recently come to understand more deeply this Eko Hensho because he encountered a person who spoke native Chinese, and they told him sort of some of the references of what this Eko Hensho refers to in like common language. So anyway, well, before going to that, just to be clear, the ko in here is light, and then sho is illumination. So illumination, as I said, withdraw, turning the light inwards, illuminating the self. So we have a to turn, and ko is light, and then hen is to return, show illumination. So before going on to what my teacher said, maybe it would be important to say how this word turns up in other traditions of Zen, because Dogen Zenji didn't come up with it. Apparently, it appears before Dogen Zenji, and he's referencing it. And usually, from what I understand, I'd like to study this more, but from what I understand, it refers to a type of zazen where one turns the introspection, like turns the sort of method of or the focus or whatever of their zazen to the self, and everything becomes self. It's similar in the way that we speak about it. Instead of saying this is the subject here and that's the object, everything is illuminated as the self. So the difference is that the idea, from what I can understand, is that one keeps going inward, turning around inward and inward, and what is supposed to happen is that eventually we investigate the source of this light of the self emanating. And when we find the source of this light, we become awakened. So the source of this light is Buddha nature. And the teaching is that this consciousness itself is Buddha nature, is awakening, is the source. So just our bare awareness is Buddha, or Buddha nature. And so it sounds very similar, to actually what Dogen Zenji said, but there are some very important differences, I think. So the main point is that there's some deep source beyond our perception, understanding, comprehension, that is the source, this source of Buddha nature, So in Dogen Zenji's teaching, it's different. It's a bit different. So, and to explain this, I'll talk about what my teacher said. He said he encountered this Chinese person, and they told them that this is also a term. This Eko Hensho is a term for something that happens when a person is dying, and they right before they die, they have some kind of lucidity, and this is a phenomenon that's observed, of course, that sometimes right before a person passes away, they might be, unable to speak or move, and then suddenly they're lucid and they become aware and awake again. And it also refers to sunset, a sunset. So this is kind of related, the person is kind of, the sun is, they're dying, it's the sunset of their life. And the thing about a sunset, but it literally can refer to a sunset, the beautiful light that happens during a sunset. And the beautiful thing about this metaphor is, of course, that is the light and the darkness coming together to express something beautiful. Just the way, in Silent Illumination, this luminous darkness, it's this expression of both light and darkness. Eko Hensho. So it's kind of a metaphor. I think that, Dogen Zenji and Zen in general is using for this reality beyond the dichotomy between light and darkness. And when we sit directly in that reality, something beautiful and profound expresses itself. And so, relating back to the person passing away, it can also relate to second wind, what we call as a second wind, like in athletics or during a sesshin sometimes. You're getting towards the end, or you're somewhere in the middle and you're about to collapse, but somewhere from some unknown place, you have more energy and you're able to keep going. And so it's this idea of the self going beyond the self. There's some, when we run a race, or when we are cycling and we're exhausted and we think we can't go on, there's nobody but us that is the person doing the race. Or when we're sitting a sesshin and it's day 3 and you feel like you can't go on, you're sleeping every period, and somehow suddenly you wake up and you're invigorated and you feel you can keep going, as we're a few minutes before or a few hours before you felt you couldn't do it. So there's this, it's only the self, but it's the self beyond these 5 skandhas also clearly helping. So both, this person sitting but is receiving the energy from this all beings. So this is kind of what the metaphor has to do with. And with the person, passing away, it's the same kind of thing. I think the same kind of idea is that this point between life and death, we usually think of life as something very concrete and death as something very different. And it's true, once a person is dead, they don't come back to life. And when they're living, they're 100% living. But actually, when we study life and death, they're completely interpenetrated. There is no life without death, of course. As I often say, we often talk about that. There's no way that any of us could survive without the death of other beings. The food we eat and the energy that we consume all comes from something that was alive at one time. And and just on another level, the birth of the teenager is the death of the child, and they're completely interpenetrated. Or the birth of the old man is the kind of death of the young man. This sort of continuity and interpenetration between life and death. And we think it's some individual that's dying, but that individual was never really there in the way that we think they are. So when the person dies, they're not there on one level, but also it's just a change in the way that that event that we call the self is being manifest. So, right before the person passes away, some energy from beyond their own willpower, it's very obvious it's not the person's will that is making them lucid again. Something mysterious from some other place is giving them the energy. And that's this Eko Hensho. And so Dogen Zenji, in my understanding, the difference between his expression of Eko Hensho and this other way of interpreting it as, finding this ultimate spiritual source is that we can never find the source of this Buddha nature, of this light that illuminates the self. We'll never find anything other than this moment that is expressing it. But in this moment, all things are expressing it. So we'll never find some original place, because all beings together are expressing it. None of us could live one day without as I said, the life of other beings passing, and also the support of other beings in so many, different ways. So, Dogen Zenji, just to kind of bring this into focus of what he means by this, this is a very famous thing that he said. He was making a quote in his, I think it's Shobogenzo, Buddha Nature, from the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra, Parinirvana Sutra, and he quotes this very famous quote that says, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. And because he's not a native speaker of Chinese, the word, have can also be interpreted as are. So he reads this as all sentient beings are Buddha nature. So it's there's no source of Buddha nature, because every person, everything, every molecule, every blade of grass is participating, functioning, offering Buddha nature. There's no one place we can say that it originates. And also the individual is completely 100% vital to the expression of Buddha nature. There's no springtime without a blooming flower. What is springtime? The springtime means warmer temperatures, cool nights and warm days, and flowers springing up. And without those individual flowers, or the bees coming out, the bee coming out in springtime to collect pollen is 100% expressing spring. And yet it's very clear, of course, that the bee is dependent on the flower and the warm weather, and but without the expression of these individual beings, there's no unity, there's no oneness. So sometimes we think the oneness is out there, and that's what we got to get to, because the real life is out there, this life of the unity of all things. In some sense, it's true that we kind of don't, we're deluded because we grasp onto this, our limited view, and we think this is the reality, and there's a much larger reality from a certain perspective. When we start, opening our eyes, we see that we're all living the same life, basically. But Zen teaching, Dogen Zenji's teaching, is that there's nothing more sacred than what you are doing right now. You won't find anything more Buddha than just this moment. And to me, it's the kind of pivotal difference in this, why this has meaning in our life. These teachings about Eko Hensho and Shoken and Mokusho Zen. That means the person that you are facing right now, the thing that you are doing, you will never get closer to Buddha than that. And so give it all of your energy and all of your effort to express the unity of our shared life. And so that's why, to me, that's why we study these things. Because this moment is the only way for us to express this universal reality. Of course, there's a reality much bigger than just me, but the only way to express it or to really understand, or so to speak, is through these five skandhas. So I think that's all I really wanted to say today. I found it really interesting to study some of these words, but it didn't. I was thinking or expecting to find some connections between words that I didn't really find, but I don't have the expertise, and I can't read ancient Chinese or Japanese or Sanskrit, or Pali, so it's pretty limited what I can come up with. But I still some things clicked for me with this that I think are interesting and important. So I'll leave it there and see, does anybody have any observations or questions today? Let's see, Ryushin had something.
Thank you, Sensei. Yeah, a question. The king of Shoken, what is the meaning?
It's to see, or of Shoken. Yeah, it means basically to see. But it's a kind of a clear, it's a more, it's often can be more than just this eye meeting the subject of vision, but it means to see, or to understand. Can mean to understand or fully comprehend. So Shoken, yeah. Lacey had something?
Okay, I'm sorry. I just now realized this when you were saying that, but can you compare and contrast Shoken with Kensho?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. So, yeah, because that's a different show. That show means nature, or Buddha nature. It means, so Kensho means seeing the nature, seeing the Buddha nature. So, in my understanding, this means one has an experience of seeing their true nature, the true nature, Buddha nature. To me, it's similar to the Eko Hensho interpretation that was not Dogen Zenji's teaching, the more ancient teaching, that if we study, practice, or if we do Zazen deeply enough, we'll have some experience of seeing directly the nature of reality. And we'll see Buddha nature or Prajna Paramita directly and awaken. And so usually, in my understanding, in Rinzai Zen, that is considered the beginning of your practice. Like, from their perspective, Dogen Zenji is talking about all of this stuff he's talking about is stuff that you can't understand until you've had a Kensho. He's talking about like sort of post-enlightenment reality. But from what we read from Dogen Zenji, he really disliked this way of thinking, and really disliked this word Kensho Zen. Really didn't like that, because, and I think the main reason is, how do we see what we are? How do we see something in the subject-object relationship? How do we see something beyond the subject-object relationship? Is his main criticism. And he felt like this way of thinking about Buddha nature, that it's some kind of spiritual entity within us, or some quality or thing that we need to work hard enough, uncover the dirt, and see, our true nature. That sounded like Atman to him, which the Buddha taught was not his teaching. Atman teaching in the Buddha's day, it's different now, I think, was that all beings have some kind of spiritual, or all beings are part of this one kind of reality of Atman, like this one oversoul, or this one true self. And each one of us has a piece of that Atman within us, and we need to practice hard enough to release the Atman so that it can join back to its original source. And the Buddha was clear that that was not his teaching. For Dogen Zenji, this Kensho Zen, I think, sounded like Atman, because there's no way to see what is beyond the subject-object relationship. There's no way, all beings are Buddha nature expressing. There's no way to take every view. My view in Dogen Zenji's teaching, my view, your view, every person's view here, every view and perception in the universe is Buddha. So how can one person see that? How can I can never be you. I have these 5 skandhas, and even if I have a transcendental experience, I cannot take your 5 skandhas. But so that's why Dogen Zenji said it's not possible to see the nature in that way. So it's different than clear seeing. So clear seeing is Zazen. And this reality, the only way to clearly see this true reality is to be it, sit down into it. And the unity of Avalokiteshvara with Prajna Paramita implies that this is one seamless reality. Avalokiteshvara, his or her practice, and Prajna Paramita are one reality. And so there's no way that one person can see the Prajna Paramita, separately from Prajna Paramita. Together, they express and reveal, it. And see, Ryushin and Russ also both have one.
I give my turn to Ross.
I'm sorry, Rishan, I didn't catch that.
I will talk after Ross.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, Russ.
Well, I thank you so much for bringing this whole piece to us. Um, it, anytime you really encounter Dogen, and usually I first experienced that when in going to Akamura Roshi's Genzo talks, and I tell people, ask people to ask me about it, and I'd say, well, yeah, he just blew the top of my head off, and I think this piece is kind of similar for me. So thank you so much for bringing this forward. One of the things, and I'm bringing this up as a comment, but also as a question, because I suspect there's got to be something wrong with what I'm thinking about this, and so we've talked a lot in the last few months about that illustration in opening the hand of thought with the line and the Z prime and ZZ primes and kind of where our practice or where enlightenment is, and how we often think about it as the line, but it's really returning. And it seems to me that what this is saying is it's all of it. I mean, it's the line, it's the going away, it's the coming back, that our practice is just all of it. It's not, there's no one part that we can look at and say, that's prajna or that's enlightenment. Just like, it's all of it. And so tell me where I'm wrong.
No, it's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up, because it really has an impact just on our zazen too, because like this Eko Hensho, it's the same thing. We can think of thinking as kind of discrimination or the light, and non-thinking as the darkness. There's no thinking, it's dark, it's the line ZZ.
Mm-hmm.
And but Dogen Zenji says in Fukan Zazengi, it's going beyond what is not thinking, beyond thinking. So this Eko Hensho includes the light and the darkness. So we're thinking. Without the thinking, there's no, practice, no non-thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking and non-thinking only have meaning when we compare them. When we say there's discrimination or there isn't, it's kind of a discrimination too. But we never negate thinking. That's why we don't negate thinking in our zazen, because that is an expression of Prajna Paramita, the light. We think of that as kind of the light, the discriminating thinking mind. And then the darkness is what we want to get to. We want to sit there and we want to not think. We want to have peaceful, settled zazen, without any thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the thinking and the non-thinking are part of our life. And part of our zazen. The difference is our practice of letting go or non-grasping. That's what makes it so much different than our regular daily life. Is usually we're always doing this and saying, I really do believe in what I'm thinking, or I'm grasping to that and somehow using it to get my way or to do what I think is best. But in Zazen, it's very, this dark illumination, where both the light and the darkness are completely penetrated. So we're not thinking and we're not thinking. We're not completely having no thought, and we're not thinking in the same way. And that's, Eko Hensho too. And because we have to be really careful about setting up some kind of ultimate evil, that is the boogeyman. And yet we have to have some kind of wisdom to face our life, to know what's healthy. We can't just say anything goes, and we also can't say this is evil.
Mhm.
So that's where the practice, as you said, all of that is part of our practice. And Suzuki Roshi talked about it in simpler, probably more profound terms. Like he said, the thoughts coming up, or your problems or your difficulties, are kind of like weeds that that actually make the garden able to grow. Like we without weeds are just a relative term. We call one thing a weed in one situation, and we call it an ornamental flower in another situation. But even in our garden, without the weeds, or without the organic material that's nurturing those wholesome things, there's no growth. So there's no awakening without delusion, and no delusion without awakening. And yet, so that's why going beyond is really what we mean by going beyond Buddha, or going beyond delusion and enlightenment. Going beyond this light or darkness, this dichotomy between light and darkness. Just here in this moment. So thank
Cool.
you. I appreciate you bringing that back to the Zazen. I had actually hoped to do that, but forgot. So thank you.
Cool.
It's a really good point. Okay, and Ryushin, did you want to ask your question now?
Oh, it's strange. um, like I appreciate this kind of I don't know how to say, analysis maybe, or identifying the different places where the expression show appears. I think that it's like bring some light about the meaning of practice. I was wondering the relationship between Eko Hensho and the part of the Genjokoan in which Dogen says that letting things, like going through things is delusion, let things come is enlightenment or something. But I don't know if,
Mhm.
like in that part in the Genjokoan,
Right.
yeah, it has some kind of relationship with Eko Hensho.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think so. I mean, I think it does, because that part of Genjokoan, it's a familiar part for many of us, where it says something like conveying oneself onto all things to carry out practice enlightenment is delusion. And all things coming to the self or towards the self, practicing through the self, is enlightenment. So, usually we think of the second part as his definition of what enlightenment is. But, the parts after that, I think, is where he explains actually that we need to go beyond enlightenment. So the basic thing is that if we are only in touch with this unity, or in touch with, all things coming forward, if that is our only practice, we have difficulty putting our life energy into using these five skandhas as a bodhisattva. So we can kind of think of it as the kind of darkness of all things expressing themselves through us, and the kind of light of us using these five skandhas, this delusion, this discrimination, in order to see what needs to be done to address the suffering of this self and of others. So I think it's related. Yes, in those five eyes of the Bodhisattva, of the five Prajna, the five wisdom eyes, the Shobogenzo, the true Dharma eye, is the eye that sees non-duality and also sees duality. It's the eye of the Bodhisattva that understands the emptiness of all things and sees that sentient beings don't really exist. But it's also the eye that sees sentient beings to address their suffering. So it's the eye that includes like delusion and enlightenment, and from a certain perspective. So without this wisdom, the wisdom of emptiness, that sentient beings aren't really real, and our suffering isn't real, and this self isn't real, we have no way to make our way. All we can do is follow our own desires, or we might hit some wisdom here and there. But ultimately, if our life is based on this separation from others, we're lost. And yet, if we just stay in this kind of darkness, we can't see what needs to be done. So the example that I often use is, when we talk about ethnic relationships or race, because it's very clear that human beings all belong to one race, the human race. And all of these other things that through the ages have tried to separate us, such as the culture or the language we speak or the color of our skin, they don't have any basis in ultimate reality. Like for example, if you just analyze the human body genetically, none of these things make any difference. We're all the same species. And I heard one time, there's more genetic diversity between black people in Africa than there is between white people and black people in America. It doesn't have anything to do with the color of your skin, like the genetic commonality between people, for example. And yet, if we don't recognize the historical reality that this nation was founded on, that was based in this separation between people dependent on their race, there's no way to address the issues that we're facing today. So there's no way we can understand someone a different viewpoint than our own, unless we go ahead and say, actually, you did have a different life experience than I did, and you have a different history. This group of people has a legacy that's different from this group of people. But we need to do that within the wisdom, knowing that the reason we're saying that we're different is that we can realize that we're living the same life. This kind of ironic thing, that it seems, is that we can't actually understand that we're all living the same life unless we take into consideration our individuality. So that's my understanding at this point. Okay. Well, is there anything else today before we sign off?
Can I ask, assure you that you and I chat briefly about your coming out for Shohaku Akamura's event next week before we sign off? I mean, just you and I hang on afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're in the midst of going on to the next event, though, unfortunately.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, at some point, let's chat.
yeah, let's do that. And I'm way behind on my emails and stuff as usual, but
Okay.
maybe we can make a date for that
Sounds good.
soon. Okay. Oh, well, one thing is that I won't be giving a talk next week. So I'm going to be in Bloomington, and that's what Russ is referring to. And there's scheduled events in the morning on Saturday. So
Okay.
I won't be giving a talk, I think. But please, everyone, feel free to come and sit together and say hello on Saturday if you like. And Ryushin will be going with me, and Russ is very graciously and generously offered to open up his home to us while we're in Bloomington. So we're going to be staying with Russ, and that's what he's referring to. So we're looking forward to that. This is the 20-year anniversary of Sun Shinji, and it's the so-called retirement of my teacher, whose birthday happens to be around the same time they came to Bloomington 20 years ago. And his retirement, also is coinciding with this. And it's also Hoko Carnegas, who is now the vice abbot, is taking over as the abbot of Sun Shinji. So all of these things are rolled up into one thing. There's also a book coming out written by my teacher's disciples that is being unveiled at this event too. So it's going to be a big event, an auspicious occasion, I think. Let's see, Lacey, did you have something, or did I say what you were going to say?
No, I just wanted to throw out there too, talking about Eko Hensho. I think in English, it's also called The Last Blush. Is that right? I just thought in case anybody else wanted to Google that.
Yeah, it's terminal lucidity is another word for it. And a lot of times I think what happens is the person does get flushed, actually, or the color comes back to their face. So maybe that's where the last blush comes from too.
It makes me think though about like the sunset and the like the fall colors, the last burst of redness or something like that.
Yeah, it's right. It's a pretty amazing metaphor, and you start getting the idea, the sense of how Dogen Zenji's kind of symbolism is so deep, and so penetrating. Just in one little piece like this, all of these things are there, and they can be taken on many different levels. So he was really an amazing poet, apparently, too. And he used that to express the Dharma. Okay. All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for practicing here today with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.